Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. I am your original host, as always, Charles Hamaker. Last week, we did have Omari, or perhaps a little low to some of you. Omari's back in Chicago, back at school, so he won't be here with us this week, but we do have somebody else here. This is their first run on the show. Essentially like a trial by fire here, kind of throwing him right into it. This is Bel. And I will let Bel introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. So just as Chuck said, I'm Bel. I'm happy to be here with you today, Chuck. Not too much to tell, but I love sports, and I'm glad to be able to talk about them today.
So we've been sort of playing with the idea of looking into a co-host for a while now. Big O kind of teased it, and we're going to look into it, see how it goes today. With our standard show as always. I mean, we're not going to change anything up, not going to do anything too crazy. And we'll start as always with our Seattle Seahawks here, who took on the Arizona Cardinals in the regular season finale, Week 18. Still don't like saying Week 18 against the Arizona Cardinals, winning that game 38-30, spoiling the Cardinals' chance at an NFC West title behind big rushing game by Rashad Penny, good consistent game by Tyler Lockett through the air, who seems to always have good games in State Farm Stadium. Great way to finish out the season. Obviously, as I've said several times throughout the year, sort of a head banging against the wall sort of year. Just so many frustrations, losing so many games due to close. One-score games, always tough. Usually games that you could trust this team to win some way or the other, right? Just didn't go that way this year. But to play spoiler to anybody in the division is always fun, especially Arizona. Could kind of lost my hatred for San Francisco just because we've only lost like 3 games to them since Russell's been drafted. And Arizona, they've been a solid team. They've had their struggles throughout the year, but they're still a playoff team. So ultimately, the offense kind of stalled out. I don't know how you saw it as much, but for the most part, in the early half, it looked like they kind of struggled. Until Rashad Penny got really going. That was kind of something I wanted to see. Second play from scrimmage, Chandler Jones comes around the edge, smacks the ball at Russell's hand, and Arizona's got a touchdown. We're kind of in trouble here. And I was like, okay, you've got a rush, right? And what do we do usually when you're dealing with a pass rush that's good, which tends to be a lot of pass rushes against us, which should hopefully be to get some sort of run game going, right?
Right.
Rashad Penny ends up with 190 yards on the ground. Tyler Lockett has a great game, 2 touchdowns. Offensive line had its struggles, I'd say, but they kind of got going throughout the day. So what did you see on offense, on the offense side of the ball?
I really liked Russell Wilson targeting Tyler Lockett. That was something that I kind of missed throughout the season. I don't feel like I saw it as much as we normally do. And so to see him throw the long balls and get to Tyler Lockett, that was a good thing to see.
Yeah, he's had some great games. I think he had a really big game against Indianapolis the first week, but then there's some games where he just disappeared.
Right.
And whether that be by way of playing with a Geno Smith, and there's no discredit on Geno, but it's Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, 2 different planets, right?
Oh yeah.
Or it's just the way the offense has been just inconsistently. There have been times where Tyler Lockett kind of non-existent, and that's not his own fault. Tyler has been one of the most underrated receivers in the league for a while, and I feel like you say he's most underrated, it kind of takes that effect away from him. But yeah, I think that's when at least I looked at it in the offseason leading up to the year. You look at the potential of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, maybe a healthy Chris Carson, obviously with our lovely issues at running back in terms of health. You signed Gerald Everett, you got Russell Wilson. You think about that and you think about this idea of a Rams offense with Shane Waldron, you're like, you kind of salivate a little bit. And we only got kind of bits and tastes of that, kind of in the win against Indianapolis, some stuff with Detroit, but it's Detroit, and then Arizona, right? So you kind of get some tastes and you think about it, but you hope that would have been sustained through a whole season. So yeah, I always like getting Tyler Lockett involved. I will never get sick of that. Defensively, Kyler Murray did not have as big of a game as perhaps he needed to. And I think that you can credit the defense for that. Obviously, you look at the score, you give up 30 points. But Jordan Brooks had a big day, 20 tackles, sets the franchise record for tackles in the season. Secondary, losing, you're not Jamal Adams, you're out some starting corners. And then eventually later in the game, you lose Quandre Diggs to an injury, and we'll get to that in injury news. But, playing with all those guys and some guys on the practice squad, you played relatively well. I mean, A.J. Green beat you a couple times, but A.J. Green is A.J. Green. So I thought the defense, they played all right. Could have been better. I know some of those points came from defensive turnovers. Yeah, the Seahawks had, 3 turnovers? Three turnovers, and Arizona converted on all of those. So defense, I think they did their job for the most part. What did you see? You look at Quandre Diggs, you lose him, but Jordan Brooks, without Bobby Wagner, 20 tackle game, that's huge.
I agree with you. I think it was a very good defensive effort. I think I saw Kyler Murray on third down more times than I thought I would. It seemed like I glanced up and they were at third again, and sometimes completed and other times didn't. So I think they did a good job of keeping that pressure there.
Yeah, and that's a good point, is bringing up third down, because you get third and long, and with a guy like Kyler Murray, you do kind of have to worry about the scramble factor, but third and long, you can only do so much, and eventually teams will wisen up to that. So, yeah, I mean, a guy who was an MVP candidate earlier in the season, and they've had their own issues there, but I think he did a good job there, especially with the threat that he's got and the talent they've got. With James Conner, had a 2-touchdown day, but was held to like 30 yards on the ground. So as we speak about stats, we'll get over to stat leaders here. Russell Wilson, in his normal spot, completed 15 of his 26 attempts for 238 in yards, 3 touchdowns on the 1 pick. Russell Wilson joins Peyton Manning as the only players with at least 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns in each of their first 10 seasons. And in the other record that was broken, Russell surpassed Manning for most wins by a quarterback in his first 10 seasons. On the ground, Rashad Penny, 23 carries for 190 yards, 1 touchdown. It's just kind of insane to me that I've been numb to the numbers. I believe that Penny joined Sean Alexander as the only running back to have 3 consecutive games of 130-plus yards. Sean Alexander's not bad company. And you don't have the same offensive line that he did. So, I mean, you look at Sean Alexander's line, you look at Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson, 2 Hall of Famers on one side. It's insane to think about. Rashad Penny's doing it with guys that I don't want to discredit them, but I wouldn't say that they're Hall of Famers. So it's kind of insane to look at. So that it's weird. It's a weird thing to say, hey, he's got 190 yards and not think twice about it. Continuing with stats here, Tyler Lockett, as we mentioned, 5 receptions, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tackle department, as we mentioned as well, Jordan Brooks, 20 total tackles, 14 of them being solo, 2 tackles for loss and turnovers. Cody Thompson recovered a fumble on a muffed punt. So turnover is still good to see that, but would like more. But can't complain as we're at the end of the year here. So offensive and defensive MVPs. This is the first time I'm doing it with somebody that isn't one of the original few from the podcast. Offensive side of the ball, I give it to Rashad Penny. I mean, 190 yards, it's hard to discredit that. Russell Wilson, 3 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. That's solid. But the 1 interception kind of mars it. 238. I think Rashad Penny was kind of been the driving force today. What do we think?
I completely agree with you. I think Rashad Penny was a good surprise towards the end of the season, and coming back, Carson coming back, I hope doesn't affect his touches too much, because it'd be nice to see that duo out there.
That is something that I think we'll have to look at for season recap next week. It's definitely something that is going to have to be addressed. I mean, let alone, you want to look at that as a duo, right? But with Penny as an unrestricted free agent right now, you got to deal with that first. And I know that in post-game press conference, Penny mentioned that he would like to stay here. He called it home. But you can only do so much when a bigger contract is offered to somebody. And I'll admit it. I've admitted it several times over the past few weeks when he's had great games. I was a critic of Rashad Penny over his time on his rookie contract. I think some of that is warranted, but also, you never really know when people can turn it around. And I think I talked to O about it. I said, hey, what if he just turns it around at the end of his contract?
And having that support from Adrian Peterson isn't bad either.
Yeah, and I think Pete Carroll the media spoke to Adrian Peterson about it, wanting to play more. And he said it's been great in the organization. And Rashad Penny hasn't been shy to come and talk to him for advice. So you got to wonder about it. Obviously, in the sports world, we have to look at off the field things. Peterson's had some stuff in the past. I don't think that scandal's new to anybody that follows football. But you also have to look, I don't know if you quantify second chances, right? But if we're just looking at it solely from the Seahawks point of view, I think he brings intense value. Obviously, like you talk about Rashad Penny, does he want to stop playing? Does he want to start coaching? That is kind of up to see, and that's this kind of things we'll have to follow through the offseason here. The defensive side of the ball, I think it was kind of an easy pick. I looked at Jordan Brooks, 20 total tackles, 14 of them being solo, 2 tackles for loss. Brooks has been somebody that I was a little bit quizzical of when they drafted him so high. I was a Patrick Queen fan, so taking him before Queen was something I was curious about. But I think, second year and to set the franchise record in tackles, I believe being second or third in the league in total tackles, that's a big deal. So on the defensive side of the ball, do you have anything different than a Jordan Brooks?
I don't. My heart and just a speedy recovery for Quandre Diggs on the defensive end.
Yep.
It's never good to see injuries out on the field. And so not a game that you want to lose a guy to. So
No. Yeah, exactly. Last week of the season, and especially that stadium and all the things that have happened in that stadium. Losing Cam Chancellor, neck injury in that stadium, Earl Thomas and his infamous middle finger in that stadium, Richard Sherman, ACL injury in that stadium, and Quandre Diggs. The only good thing about, I don't like saying there's a good thing about an injury, is that there was no ligament damage. So It's a clean break, and he should be back practicing on a field in about 4 months. So that's the only good thing about it. No ligament damage, which is kind of a perfect segue to injury news, which, again, is never a fun segment. On Tuesday, the 4th of January, Alex Collins was placed on injured reserve with an abdomen injury, which is ending his season. There's only 1 week in the season left. On January the 7th, on Friday, Bobby Wagner was ruled out of the season finale. His sprained knee, just the swelling never went down. He misses his first game since 2018. Others that were ruled out for Week 18 against the Cardinals includes right tackle Brandon Shell, who dealt with a shoulder injury, as well as a stint on the COVID-19 list. He missed the final 5 games of the year, so you kind of got to wonder. I believe Shell might have been on the second year of his deal. If you can't stay healthy and you're only on a short deal, do you look at bringing him back? And especially on an offensive line that struggled, do you look to upgrade at that right tackle position? Cornerback John Reed also missed that game with a concussion. Will Dissly, Gabe Jackson, and Carlos Dunlap were all questionable against the Cardinals. On Saturday, the 8th, prior to the game against the Cardinals, Brandon Shell was placed on injured reserve. I know it's the last week of the season. All that does was open up a roster spot for tight end Tyler Mabry off the practice squad. So we get to game day inactives. Quarterback Jacob Eason out, going to a guy that's kind of been the third quarterback, especially with COVID hanging around. Offensive guard Gabe Jackson, tight end Will Dissly, linebacker Bobby Wagner, and cornerback John Reed, all game day inactives. And then post-game, as Bel mentioned, Quandre Diggs breaks his right fibula. He dislocated his right ankle as well. And like we mentioned, clean break, no ligament damage, should be good. But obviously, I'm sure you saw it during the game. Just tears going down his face. His teammates were pissed off. It just kind of tells you about the value that he brings, not only as a player, obviously a Pro Bowler, probably the best, easily, I'd say the best defensive back this year. But to show what he means to that locker room is a big deal. And I know that his contract's up, but I would pay him what he wants. And then kind of something I didn't see, wide receiver DK Metcalf may need offseason surgery for bone spurs in his foot. That's going to depend on the team. They're looking at their options right now. May need surgery. So we'll get back to you if he needs that. But at the moment, should be fine. He played through it, though, which is, bone spurs, little broken bones in the foot. Not good. Wednesday, the 5th, we looking at team notes here. Rashad Penny was nominated and earned the NFC Player of the Week honors on the offensive side of the ball for his 170-yard performance against the Lions. Will he win it again this week? I wouldn't bet against it. Also on the 5th, Russell Wilson wins the Bart Starr Award. The Bart Starr Award is an award given annually to the player who best exemplifies outstanding character and leadership in the home, on the field, and in the community. Wilson joins Hall of Famer Steve Largent, who was the first winner of the Bart Starr Award and quarterback Trent Dilfer as the only Seahawks to win the player voted award. And now we have to get back to the Russell Wilson sort of drama. January 6th, Russell Wilson states that his goal is to win more Super Bowls, and he plans to do it in Seattle. Again, I know that I've been on the route of I'm taking what is actually factual and what has actually been said. That only helps my case here. January 7th, DK Metcalf states that he is not trying to leave and would like a contract extension from the Seahawks. DK's final year on his contract is after the next season. And Sunday, January 10th, the 2022 opponents for Seattle were finalized as the season ended and all the standings went final. Obviously, you play the NFC West opponents at home, included by the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, Oakland Raiders, and both New York teams in the Jets and the Giants. And then on the road, obviously, again, your NFC West opponents, and then the New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kansas City Chiefs, LA Chargers, and Detroit Lions. Not a fun away slate. I'm assuming that Tom Brady's still going to be with the Bucs just because he just kind of sticks around. And then you look at the Chiefs, and the Chargers are a good team too. I mean, you look at Justin Herbert. I know their season ended last night, but them, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, LA, not going to be fun. And it's never fun either going into the Superdome in New Orleans. I mean, I don't know when the last time we won down there was. So going to be a tough year. But it all depends on the offseason in regards to how we do. And then today, earlier in the day, Pete Carroll states that I'm in great shape and that he's not worried about his current job safety. I talked about it earlier in the year. I said if it comes down to it at the end of the year, if you have to pick, I'm picking Russell Wilson if we're looking at Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll. The way that the end of the season's gone, I highly doubt we're looking at either of those two guys leaving. It just seemed like it. I mean, they've both talked up their chemistry. They've looked at it on the field. I mean, I know after Russell's rushing touchdown this game, he was really pumped up, and he went and basically embraced Pete. It doesn't look like we're going to lose any of those guys. I mean, do you think I don't think either of those guys are going to leave the organization.
Given last night's game and how well they did against Arizona, who held a top spot in their conference for most of the year, I don't think that their banging on the wall season was due to coaching or Russell Wilson, other than, of course, the unfortunate injury to Russell's finger. So I don't foresee either of those guys going anywhere.
Yeah, and I don't think at this point it would make sense to do that. It's just about holding everybody accountable and making sure that the issues that this team have are addressed. Because you can't, as I've said, that you can't just keep putting a Band-Aid, on these holes in the boat. Just not going to work. As we look to league news here, just some sort of minor things. On January the 5th, NFL teams could be docked draft picks and or be fined heavily for unprofessional behavior during interviews at the NFL draft, and the infamous Wonderlic test has been scrapped. On the 6th of January, the Washington football team announced that they will have a new name. It will come out on February 2nd, and they've already teased their new uniforms on social media. Also announced on the 6th, there will be no capacity limit at this year's Super Bowl. The Los Angeles County officials do not plan to limit the big game's attendance despite COVID-19 infection rates rising amid the Omicron variant outbreak.
A lot of sad Dallas fans out there then that were really hoping to bring the Super Bowl there.
It was announced that AT&T Stadium would be a sort of backup, and AT&T Stadium will get more Super Bowls. I mean, that does look just like a crown jewel, so they'll get it. But yeah, kind of interesting to see that's like, hey, you guys are going to be a backup. And I don't, unless something happens between now and then, I think they'd have to announce it around now, right? You know, early playoffs, because that's a big deal. I mean, when cities know they have a Super Bowl, that is a big event. So yeah, I don't imagine it'll move. And then January 9th is Black Monday. If you don't know what that is when a bunch of coaches get fired around the NFL. We've already had 3 of them be announced. The Vikings fired Mike Zimmer. The Bears fired Matt Nagy. And Miami fires Brian Flores, which is the most surprising news of the day, as Brian Flores has probably been the best coach of the bunch. So that is something interesting to see around the league as things are starting to change. And at least at this point, 134, Pete Carroll is still a Seahawk. So as we look to the record here, the Seahawks finished the season out with a 7-10 record, 4th in the NFC West. We'll have a season recap coming for you this upcoming week. No,